Continuing our study in the Westminster Larger Catechism, we have designated this section the doctrine of God, or theology proper. We're in question number 7. This is part 5, installment number 6. The question of number 7 is, what is God? The divines answered, God is a spirit, and of himself infinite in being, glory, blessedness, and perfection. All-sufficient, eternal, unchangeable, incomprehensible, everywhere present, almighty, knowing all things, most wise, most holy, most just, most merciful, and gracious, long-suffering, and abundant in goodness and truth. As I've noted before, the Westminster Divines in question 7 direct our attention to the question which can only be answered from the Holy Scripture, of which they have clearly set forth that principle previously. What is God? They began their very statement by saying, God is a spirit, out of John 4:24. God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And we have said that that first statement about God is essential to the relevance of the rest of their answer concerning the very nature and being of our God. In the last presentation, we noted that the divines define God by stating that God is in and of himself infinite in being, and we defined glory, blessedness, and perfection. And we're going to look at God's blessedness in this presentation. In 1 Timothy 1:11, we read, the glorious gospel of the blessed God. God is totally and completely blessed in that he is not the subject of any unhappiness, but has total satisfaction in his being as related to all things. God is sufficient. He is not unhappy. I remember when I was younger, growing up in a non-Reformed church, and the question used to be, why did God create man? And that great theological answer was, because he was lonely. That's just the opposite of what the divines have taught us and what Scripture says. He is blessed because he is not the subject of unhappiness. He is absolutely and totally satisfied in his being as it relates to all things. Therefore, when we call God blessed, 3 perfections are ascribed to him theologically. First, that God is absolutely perfect. This blessedness is the property of perfection or absolute completeness. Because God is perfect in this blessedness, he has life and is free from disturbance inwardly or outwardly. Second, God knows himself fully, and thereby he knows all things as they are decreed and as they are in agreement with his knowledge and will. God takes great pleasure in his own absolute perfection. God is fully conscious of his infinite glory, and he is, in that sense, happy in it. And third, God delights in himself and all that he is. God rests in himself and takes pleasure in himself and is perfectly satisfied in all sufficient being, whereby nothing could be added to his pleasure. For all things are done according to his sovereign knowledge, and therefore he acts upon it by divine will. God's life is one of uninterrupted rest and peace. He is not prone to worry. This rest, though, do not mistake in it to say that God is not active. But it means that he is at rest in what he is, who he is, and how he acts according to all things. In all of this, we are simply stating that God is his own blessedness. Blessedness and God are the same thing. By means of his intellect, he is fully conscious of his own perfection. There are no imperfections. There are no times where God second guesses his decisions. Further, by means of his will, he supremely loves his knowledge, and he acts upon it with calm delight. Thus, we see the expressions in Scripture according to the pleasure of the will of God. It is from this delight that inward joy itself springs forth, the joy with which God delights in himself as being the highest good.